Alright, I finally got a 3D printer. Now I can have literally anything I could ever want. Printer, make me a girlfriend. Wait, what? You can't even print a simple girlfriend? But why not? Oh, she has a sister? Ah, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Forget I asked. Yeah, okay. Hey there, how's it going? I'm TechDweeb, welcome. Thanks for clicking on the video today. I'm a big fan of plastic crap, as you might have noticed. I love toys, I love little doodads, I love things that look like things. I always have and I probably always will. I can pretty much guarantee that like in 40 years from now, I'm gonna be an ancient old dweeb in a retirement home and the nurse will come in to change my diaper and I'll still be showing off my Ninja Turtles. So when I learned that you could get a 3D printer to make your own plastic crap, oh buddy, I was interested immediately. Useful household items that improve your life? Sure, whatever. But more importantly, toys. Little D&D minis, weird little decorations, and especially handheld accessories. That's why I wanted a 3D printer in the first place. And that's why I reached out to a few manufacturers to shamelessly use my YouTuber powers to beg for one. Thankfully, the good folks over at Elegoo took pity on me and sent me over their latest and greatest thingy, the CENTAURI Carbon 2 combo. Now that also makes me a little bit nervous about making this video because I am a total noob when it comes to 3D printing. This is my first experience doing any 3D printing stuff. And what I've learned so far is that 3D printing is somehow both easier and harder than I expected. Sometimes you push a button and the thing you want to come out, it comes out. Other times you're there spending 3 hours trying to print a frog and wondering why its feet keep falling off. So please understand that this is not an expert review. Far from it. This is more like a novice's tour of a giant complicated machine that I barely understand but have managed to convince to make a few cool things. I'm going to show you the setup process, the software, my first prints, some successes, some mistakes, a few things that I wish I knew when I started, and also a bunch of stuff that I don't know about and I want to learn. If that sounds good to you, stick around. And if it doesn't, well, stick around anyway. You already clicked on the video. The hardest part's over. The CENTAURI Carbon 2 is a fully enclosed Core XY printer. Core XY means that there's belts and gears and science happening inside probably while the print head zips around and does printer stuff. But I don't want to bore you with all the technical details. The big feature of this thing is right here. The canvas module. This can manage up to 4 filament spools at once for multicolor printing, and it wastes less filament than a lot of similar systems. It also has RFID, so you can tap a spool of filament against this and then it automatically knows what it is. Like magic, or like RFID. So basically magic. This thing can also apparently print hotter materials like ABS thanks to a 350-degree hot end. Beyond that, you've got automatic bed leveling, a built-in camera for monitoring prints, and all sorts of fancy printer nerd features for printer nerds that I do not understand. I'll put the specs on the screen for you, just don't ask me to pretend to know what they mean. This was pretty much the biggest box that I'd ever received for a piece of tech. When it arrived at my house, my mom was like, "TechDweeb, what the heck kind of computer is that?" And I said, "It's not a computer, it's a 3D printer." And she said I should use it to print a resume. And I told her it wasn't that kind of printer, and then she told me to take the hint, and I didn't know what that meant, but I was too excited about my new 3D printer to care. They also sent me a big box of filament, 10 spools of this stuff. Thank you, Elegoo, for fueling my future plastic addiction. This thing is freaking massive, but it comes mostly assembled, so that's not really a problem for me. Packed inside the printer is a bag of accessories, some sample filament, screws, tools, grease, a USB stick, and then this here is the screen. And underneath this packing foam is more parts. Tubes, cables, plastic bits, screws, and most importantly, the paper instruction manual. And I'm glad this was here because I actually did need to follow this. So I loosened the print bed and I attached the screen, I installed the cleaning assembly, mounted the canvas unit, attached this thing to that thing, and then attached another thing to the other thing. Man, I am good at narrating setup guides. Elegoo, if you're looking for an official instruction manual voice actor, you should have your people call my people. My mom. Have your people call my mom. Next up were the filament spool holders, the filament tubes, and the cable connecting the canvas system to the printer. And then the top cover snapped together, and that went on top, up there. And yeah, there we go. We're fully assembled and ready to rock. Honestly, the setup was pretty painless. The only injury sustained was me biting my tongue during a gummy bear break, but I didn't catch that on camera. When you boot it up for the first time, you're going to be picking your language, connecting to the Wi-Fi, and then just let it run through its calibration routine. Loading filament is actually really cool. You just tap the spool against the RFID reader. When it makes a beep, you know that it's detected properly. You just tell it which spool you're using and you feed the filament in, and the machine grabs it and loads it automatically, and it just knows what filament this is. It is shockingly easy, which is great for idiots like me. At this point, I desperately wanted to print something, so I loaded up one of the sample files from the USB stick. They had this little Buddha guy on there, so that's what I went with. And here it is. This is my very first 3D print. A little tomato soup colored Buddha. After that, I loaded up more filament. You can keep 4 spools installed at once and do multicolor prints that way. And they're easy to swap out and change around whenever you want to. Let's take a quick look at the printer functions. You get this nice little touchscreen control panel, and yeah, there's not much to learn, which I appreciate because I've been rewatching the 1987 Ninja Turtles show and I don't have much brain space left for anything else right now. This screen here lets you manually move the print head and the print bed around, adjust the temperature, and do all the basic printery things that you might need to do. You'll need to use this if you're going to be changing the nozzle, for instance. You can also load print files directly from a USB stick. You don't actually need to connect the printer to your PC over Wi-Fi if you don't want to. In fact, that's exactly how I did my first few prints because the software was scary and USB sticks make sense to me because I'm old. And there's also a canvas section where you can manage your filament, add material info for non-RFID spools, and unload filament when you want to swap colors. And then there's the settings menu where you're going to find things like the Wi-Fi setup with firmware updates, calibration, and the camera settings. You can even enable time-lapse recording. The video quality isn't good, but that's still kind of neat to see, I guess. The PC software is probably the part that I struggled with the most. It's called Elegoo Slicer, which I think is based on Orca Slicer, if I'm not correctly mistaken. You can use other slicer software if you want, but I stuck with the official one because I know approximately nothing about 3D printing and I don't need to get into anything more advanced. Once you get the hang of it, the basics are pretty straightforward. You download a model online, usually an STL file, import it into the software, and there it is. And from there, you can move it around, resize it, rotate it, and then when you're ready to print it, you need to do something called slicing. This was a completely new concept to me. I had no idea this was a thing. Yeah, I'm that much of a noob. So if you don't know, slicing prepares the model for printing by dividing it into all the layers and the actions that the printer will actually do. And there's some options in here so you can actually change the way it does the slicing and the patterns and stuff. For multicolor prints, sometimes the color information is already built into the model. Other times it might only come as one color so you can paint the colors yourself right inside the software. Another thing I learned about was supports. If your model has like floating parts, the printer can't print those without something to hold them. So you need to generate supports in the software. So to do that, you just check this little box here in the support section, and then you slice the model again and it will generate the supports for you. Unfortunately, my frog wizard was not impressed. After I printed it, the supports came off and then his feet came off. And then his staff came off. The frog survived for approximately 20 seconds. I tried again with a base attached and that worked a little better. It still broke, but at least this time it was mostly in one piece and easier to glue back together. And honestly, that seems to be one of the big lessons that I'm learning with 3D printing. Sometimes things work perfectly the first time, and then some other times you spend an entire evening repeatedly torturing a frog. There's definitely some trial and error involved, but that's but part of the hobby, I guess. And also I'm learning that crazy glue is basically essential. Oh, I also wanted to mention, this is something I didn't even know for the first few days. When you're doing multicolor prints, it produces a lot of waste. I didn't even realize that this thing was spitting out these little 3D printer poops out the back. I literally walked behind it one day and stepped barefoot on a whole bunch of these little plastic caltrops that were piled on the floor. I had no idea they were there. I've only done a handful of prints, maybe like 20 small prints total, and this is how much printer poop it's generated. This is just something that 3D printers need to do, and I learned that the hard way, by stepping on it, and it hurt. These things have sharp edges. The Carbon 2 comes with a 0.4 nozzle installed, however, I also got a 0.2, and I wanted to switch so that I could get some more detail in my prints for some finer stuff, and I had a heck of a time getting it to work. Changing the nozzle was easy enough, I followed the guide on their wiki, but after I changed it, none of my prints were working. I went into the printer software and I added the profile for the new nozzle, and it should have been working, but it wasn't. My prints weren't sticking to the bed. Actually, for a good couple days, I thought I had broken the thing when I did the nozzle switch. But in my troubleshooting, at one point, I redid the calibration, and then it worked fine after that, so I guess that was the problem. Elegoo has a whole wiki and it has lots of info, but I think some steps aren't shown because they expect you to kind of know about 3D printing already. For me, as a noob, it wasn't quite enough. I think some more beginner-focused instructions would be helpful in here. That's something that Elegoo could do better. I've done a whole bunch of prints, but I'm still new to this, so none of this stuff is impressive. I haven't done anything really big either, just a bunch of random smaller stuff that I wanted to try. Like I said, my first print was this Buddha guy. I made these cool hex coasters that I actually really like, and I made this boat, which is called the Benchy. Apparently all the 3D printer guys do this boat, so I had to do it too. I want to get into making D&D minis. I already showed you my frogman. I also made this guy. I really like him. And I made this duck, which is what I printed when I was learning how to use the supports. These Steam logos too. I did a video making a mini PC Steam machine, so I made this for that. And I did a little one for my Retroid Pocket Flip too. However, the main reason I wanted a 3D printer in the first place was for handheld stuff. Unfortunately, I haven't had tons of luck there. Like, I wanted to try printing some buttons for my Mew Mini. I found some buttons online, however, they didn't print well. Or rather, they printed fine, but they still have a 3D printed texture and they don't look or feel that great. These ones here I sanded down and applied a spray paint matte coating, and that did help, but even still, they don't really feel like professional buttons. I guess you need a resin printer for those kind of cool things. I did make the better shoulder buttons for the Mew Mini, and those actually turned out pretty good. I had to sand them down a bit to get them to fit, but they did fit fine after that. However, I didn't actually like them. I didn't think they felt very comfortable, and I didn't prefer them to the stock shoulder buttons, so I didn't end up putting them on there permanently. Next up, I'm gonna try printing some shells, like the RP Classic Slim shell. I think I want to try that one. However, the very slim version requires a battery mod, so that'll be a rainy day project. And I'm looking forward to learning how to use Tinkercad to make my own stuff. I really want to figure out how to do cool stuff with this thing and use it to customize my handhelds. But for now, I'm far too much of a novice to do anything impressive. Maybe in like a year or whatever, I'll have an update video after I've mastered the process and have a whole bunch of cool new stuff to show you. But for now, this is what I've learned so far. My first few weeks with a 3D printer. My biggest takeaway is that 3D printing is somehow both easier and harder than I expected. Sometimes it's effortless. Like you find a model, you import it, it's properly sized right away, you click slice, you click print, and then an hour later you got a little Buddha or coaster or Mew Mini button or whatever. And then other times you're learning about supports, adjusting settings, reprinting parts, and gluing a frog back together for the second time that evening. In my short time with the Elegoo CENTAURI Carbon 2, I've learned that a 3D printer isn't just a tool. It's a whole hobby. There's a lot to learn, a lot to experiment with, and a lot of trial and error. But honestly, that's part of the fun, I think. Learning new tech, making stuff yourself, creating little things that didn't exist yesterday. That's pretty neat. I've only dipped my toes into the world of 3D printing so far, but I am having a great time. And thankfully, I also have a healthy supply of crazy glue for when I mess stuff up. As for the CENTAURI Carbon 2 combo, I really like it. The setup was easy, loading filament and switching colors is ridiculously simple, the print quality's been great. For a complete beginner like me, it was a really nice introduction to the hobby. You can definitely expect to see this thing again on my channel when I've, learned more and have some cool stuff to show you with it. So thank you Elegoo for sending this over. If you're interested in checking one out for yourself, I'll put the links in the thingy below. And that's going to do it for today. Hopefully this wasn't too painful to watch. If you have any tips for a clueless new 3D printer owner, let me know in the comments. And while you're down there, click the thumbs up button, subscribe and stuff. You know what to do. That's it from me. I'm TechDweeb. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.